Folks, we have in our midst today Linda Kaplan-Taylor. Welcome everyone who listens to this podcast. And Linda Kaplan-Taylor is the celebrated author of many power books along with Robin Koval. So some of her books have been The Power of Nice, The Power of Small, as well as the book called Bang, Getting Your Message Heard in a Noisy World. Today, Linda is the CEO and the Chief Creative Officer of a $10 billion ad agency creative company called the Kaplan-Taylor Group, KTG, which she founded in '97 along with Robin. And really it's an advertising and an entertainment company consistently ranked by industry publications as one of the fastest growing agencies in the United States. They've come up with some amazingly creative ideas. One very famous one is the hilarious quacking AFLAC duck campaign, which has been one of the agency's cherished accomplishments. Linda has been responsible for some of the most touching, relevant, and famous advertising campaigns, one of which I just mentioned. And it's really my pleasure to welcome you today, Linda. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay, great. So what really got me thinking about The Power of Nice and The Power of Small was the Power of Nice book. And the question that comes to mind as I was reading The Power of Small, I saw that The Power of Nice was really also present in The Power of Small. So I wanted to ask you, how did The Power of Small book come about, and how did it build on The Power of Nice?
Well, you're absolutely correct. It really was an outgrowth of The Power of Nice. Well, we had so many stories, we couldn't fit them all in the book in The Power of Nice, and so we started collecting stories, really like 2 or 3 years afterwards. And one of the things that Robin and I both noted were that so many of the great things that happen to people, almost 100% of the time, originated with some small deed or some small action that made it all come to fruition. And we started looking at the power of doing something on a very, very small scale and how people really tend to overlook it. We're in a culture where everything is, think big, see the big picture, don't sweat the small stuff. And yet what we found time and time again, the thing that would catapult a business to success usually is the germ of an idea or a kind gesture or a favor that was done to somebody. Even in the case of the AFLAC advertising, when we were asked to pitch the account, we were a relatively small, unknown agency. And we pitched it and we created, that duck, AFLAC. But
Right.
I really had no idea why we got called, and I found out it was from somebody who headed a research firm that knew somebody at AFLAC, and I didn't know the guy. And I called him up, and I said, why did you recommend us? He said, because, talk about small actions. 15 years earlier, I had taken a very good friend of his out to lunch to give him some advice about advertising. I didn't do it for any reason, just because he was the former owner of a company that we worked with, and I thought it would be a nice thing to do. And he said, and he and I have been looking for a way to say thank you. So, we call it planting a seed, putting out those positive imprints. It was such a small action, and yet I never, ever, ever would have gotten this call if I hadn't taken this guy out to lunch. So what I tell people is, positive impressions are like seeds, and they're tiny little seeds that you put out there, not because you're expecting a result, but because that's just what happens. And the magic, of course, is that those seeds come to fruition in ways that you can't possibly imagine. But when you get to be as old as I am, you see how those seeds really grow. What?
Are you 30-something? That's kind of how I'd figure your age.
Well, I thank you very much. No, I tell people I'm in my incredibly late 20s.